Hello and welcome. My name is Jasmine Keys, and you are listening to Why, How, Impact, the series that breaks down what it takes to be a leader and why on earth they do it. Today's trailblazer is Crystal Landsem, the Chief Executive Officer for Lulus, our first CEO trailblazer. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, Crystal, you are a finance girly by background. You studied business administration and accounting at Chico State. You had your big start at Alibaba. And then after a short stint as fractional CFO, Lulus asked you to join them full time. And you did that for a few years until they asked you to move into the CEO role last year. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Incredible. CEO, that is the big job. And any leader's job really is to hire the smartest people, right?
100%. That is essentially what my job is now. And yeah, best way to describe it.
And then you put the organization's biggest problems in front of them, right? And then they hire the smartest people they can find to solve those technical problems. And that kind of goes on. Experts hiring experts. And then when the experts of the experts of the experts can't solve the problem, well, then it comes right back to you, doesn't it?
Essentially, yeah. My job, I think, is to help them own risk in problem solving when they don't feel comfortable doing it on their own.
Wow. And it's a 25-year-old brand, Lulus, and you're kind of charging headfirst into its next phase of growth and innovation in the fashion e-commerce space. An incredibly competitive market, an incredibly big role. How did you end up here, Crystal? What makes you want to take on such responsibility and at such a young age?
I genuinely love what I do. I'm finding though that that's always been the case. I think the answer to that question is that I'm just a naturally curious person. I like learning. I love people. In leadership, you're surrounded by opportunities to learn, and you're surrounded by people whose lives that you can positively impact. And I think that's a privilege for me, at least. In terms of what drove me to take on this type of responsibility, if you asked me 20 years ago, the honest answer would have been for air conditioning. I should probably put that into context. So I was in a position where I needed to self-fund my own education, and I was fortunate to start working for one of the best logistics companies in the world, for Walmart distribution. It helped me to pay my way through college, but was also an opportunity to learn about supply chain. Really learning from the best of the absolute best in supply chain. And while I was going to school getting an education, I was also getting an education from my employer on everything related to supply chain. Candidly, I was working there. It was very hot in a warehouse, driving forklifts and throwing boxes on a conveyor belt. So that was highly motivating to get to a full-time job with air conditioning. Even then, I didn't really pursue leadership, but it certainly pursued me. And I was able to take what I learned there into every job that I've had ever since. I think from there, I went into public accounting that really taught me about financial acumen and business discipline. And, that introduced me to Alibaba, where they were one of the clients that I had worked on while I was in public accounting. And that's where I found my passion for e-com. I'd say before college, I think what's probably motivated me the most is that I grew up in what some people would call a challenging or traumatic childhood. And I think that created some level of empathy and maybe a more natural leadership type experience and having to grow up at such a young age. And it also motivated me to want to avoid government peanut butter from my diet. So I guess it's people. It's my childhood shaped a lot of what I've become and how I approach leadership. And I think just having passion for what I do, it's been quite the journey. And I still sometimes have to pinch myself that I'm actually in this role. But that's I'd say why I pursued it. It sort of pursued me, and I went for it. Just being prepared in the right place at the right time, I suppose.
What an incredible journey. And, you moved from CFO to CEO relatively recently. Why you? Why did they choose Crystal Landsem as the CEO?
It's so funny because I asked them the same question. I remember when David, my predecessor, he sat down and said, "Hey, I'm going to retire. I think that you're the next one. My response was, first I cried, and then I said, are you sure? And I think as women, we have some of that imposter syndrome that just naturally creeps in every now and then. But I think for me, where they saw the potential, aside from the tenure and just 9 years at Lulus and helping build and shape the business model, I have a very analytical mind and just understanding all the puts and takes of the business. What they saw was that I had been able to develop my creative side and bridge that with my analytical side. And I think as a CEO, you need to be able to understand financials, be analytical, but also understand how to lead the creative side of the organization. And in fashion, apparently it's very rare for a CFO to be able to bridge that gap and to make those creative skills align well with the analytical skills to drive the business. So that was their official answer, I think, is that my right side, left side brain connected really well for the business. And I was a big part of evolving the business model over the last 9 years. So yeah, I think that's it. Just sort of happened, and it's one of those things I never pursued either, which I think has been maybe a little more unique for me, is that I've never wanted to be in a position that I wasn't ready for. They had asked me actually back in, I think it was 2017 or 2018, as we were working towards the IPO journey, we see you as the succession plan to our founder. We want to invest in you for CEO. And I said, no, thank you. Because I wasn't ready, and I was very outspoken. They said, no, you've got 5 years. This is not something we're going to try to do overnight. We'll invest in you. And I'm like, I'm cool where I'm at. I really like, I'm loving my job where I am. And so of course you fast forward several years later, and when they said, we think you're ready, we know you're ready, I was like, cool, let's do this. And how awesome. 39 for a public company. It's wild. I still can't believe I'm where I am at. It's awesome.
It is honestly absolutely incredible. It's so inspiring, and like for everyone listening, like these sorts of stories, it shows that it does happen and it can happen if you really put your mind to something. Sounds so cliche, but you did, and you focused on what you could control, which is your skill set.
Yeah, I think that's right. And then just having a good attitude about everything and approaching everything in a learning way. And for me, like I said, never pushing myself into roles that I wasn't ready for, because I think that would have been the definition of misery, to be in a job that you're just not prepared for. It feels uncomfortable. And, a lot of people will get there to make the money, to get the title. But if you don't love what you're doing, what is the point? If you're not excited to get out of bed most days to go to work, what is the point? So I'm fortunate I get paid well to do what I love to do, which is amazing.
Yeah, and I think it's finding that balance between challenging yourself with new roles and responsibilities, but also ensuring that, yeah, like I said, you have that skill set and you are working on your own learning and development, and ensuring that's the priority, not the status.
Yep, 100% agree. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to quickly come back to what you said about the left and right side brain as well. That is such an important thing for marketers, and that's a big part of our audience, is balancing the left and right side brain, the data with the creative, and fusing those two core functions, but pieces of marketing strategy, like absolutely crucial. So you've slowly kind of become a marketer from a finance role.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think I have Alibaba to thank for that. I had a mentor there. She was originally the controller for AliExpress. And when they said, hey, we want to promote you into this role, you're going to take over leading the finance teams for the subsidiaries in the United States. It was another one of those moments of, are you sure? But when they assigned Shelly to me, she really started investing in, like, here's how you think about e-commerce and marketing. It's a completely different animal. It's a completely different way to connect with people online. And so I think just having really strong mentors, I've been so fortunate over my career to have people investing and teaching me and just really enjoying every part of that journey. I think it's been critical to where I am today.
Mentorship, yeah, it absolutely is critical to leadership, right? And have those leaders influence I guess, your leadership style and the way that you manage a team, a company?
Absolutely. Yes. I think the approach I've taken with leadership is to kind of self-reflect, and then to also think about what are the things that I appreciated about my leaders and my mentors and the people that have managed me throughout my career. And then what are the things that I didn't appreciate? And that's really shaped how I approach leadership in general. And I describe my style as, I guess servant leadership and leading with some level of empathy, high accountability, but also with empathy and kindness. And I hate micromanagement and I hate finger pointing. And so those are all things that I either had a really positive or really negative experience. And I try to take all the good from my perspective and then kind of lose all the bad and avoid that in my leadership approach.
Yeah, and I think that comes back to what you were saying about leadership and moving up in your roles as well. If you focus on how you can serve a community rather than on how that community can serve your status or your climbing of that career ladder, then it's going to be a much more, I guess, intrinsic motivation.
Yeah, yeah, 100% agree with that.
So when you look at your team at the moment at Lulus and you kind of look at your marketing leads, your finance leads, the way that you have constructed your team, talk us through why you have done it the way that you've done it.
The very honest answer is finding people that are smarter and better than me at the things that they do. I think there's a natural tendency to want to be the best at everything, especially as a leader where there's either insecurities or vulnerabilities where you want to be the person that knows all the things. And what I found and what one of my mentors had shared with me is just hire people smarter than you to give you space to think strategically. Like, the business, the ceiling is always going to be high for you. Don't ever feel threatened by it. And the moment that clicked in my brain, I think that's where the people that I've hired and the people that work at Lulus, they're like-minded. The men and women that just all they want to do is support and empower women, and it's fantastic. And then you find the best of the best at what they do, then you just don't have to worry about those things, and it frees up space to think about how to advance the business, how to move the business forward. And I think that's really important for how you hire, who you hire. They have to be better than you at the things that you are not good at. And that's okay, and being okay with that.
Yeah, having that confidence in your role as a strategic leader rather than a technical expert.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that a lot of the trailblazers have said as well. It's being that, and generalist is the word that often comes up.
Yeah.
But that's what the CEO has to be, right? You
Yeah.
have to cover every single angle.
And that could be challenging to transition when you're used to being the best at the best in what you're doing as you kind of grow and advance in your career. But I think it's the recipe for success. I really do.
What advice would you give to anyone looking to make the transition from marketing, customer service, customer experience into a more strategic CEO or general manager role?
I would say it's a very lonely job, or it can be a very lonely job. And by the time you're ready to be promoted into a CEO role, you're almost doing all of those things, but there is a thickness in your skin and a emotional pressure that comes with the job. And I think you just have to be ready and prepared for that. I think for me, and especially with how I grew up, the stress level that comes with being a CEO is maybe not as impactful as it would be otherwise, because when you experience high levels of stress and trauma in your early years, everything in comparison feels easy. And I think that's why a lot of people that have my background end up in leadership roles, because you can handle a higher degree of stress. But the pressure of keeping people employed and making sure that you're making all the right decisions, it can feel, it is very hard. It's very hard, but it's absolutely worth it because of all the positives that come with being able to shape a culture and a company and the way that you interact with customers. And I'd say my advice is just be prepared, because it's different than what you'd expect. And it's emotionally, it changes that the moment you get that title. And it can be very, very cool and very powerful, but it can also be very lonely and very challenging at times, but 100% worth it.
It comes back to that question of why on earth do you do it? I'd love to talk about that now. What is the proudest moment of your career? What has given you the biggest boost so far?
I think the easy answer would be becoming a public company CEO at 39 years old. But the real answer, I think, is the journey from when I started at Lulus at 67 million roughly in LTM revenue, and growing that to hundreds of millions of dollars, and everything in between was just hard and blood and sweat and tears, but it was absolutely magic. And if you ask me, would I do that again? I would say hell yes. It was hard, but so worth it. And so I'd say that just that entire journey is really that's the best part of my career so far. The public company stuff doesn't suck though.
You seem to really be able to connect in the moment to what you're doing and enjoy the moment rather than always striving for the next big win, the next big thing. You don't get caught in that goal trap, that happiness trap.
I mean, if you enjoy the moment, that is, you're in that happiness, right? You kind of create that for yourself. And I think, again, my biggest fear was always being too ambitious or getting to a place where you're kind of operating at a place where you're not ready for. And so, yeah, I mean, if you're not enjoying what you're doing, what's the point? And I think promoting too soon or not enjoying the ride while you're in it, it's kind of wasted. You know, you only get to live this life once.
Well, then, when you do get to the end of your career or the end of your life, even, what is your legacy? What do you want to leave behind?
With Lulu specifically, I think that my hope is my legacy has something to do with creating a space for women and for dads to be able to have parenthood and go on that journey if that's what they choose, and still be able to be badass women, badass executives that can lead a successful career and also have the joy of parenthood. In Lulu's is trying very hard to navigate that road and to create some space where we've had a baby boom over the last, let's call it 4 to 5 years. And I mean, the numbers would shock you at the number of babies that have come into the Lou crew, as we call it. And what we've done is started to invest in fractional coverage and helping people to take off time, and also encouraging our men to take time off to be at home with their partners and their new children. And it's been a really, really cool journey where not everywhere has been able to do that and to support women in that way, and creating a space where you can have a family and a really successful career. I'd say if that's my only legacy at Lulu's, I'd be really proud of that. Post Lulu's, I would say I have I have a passion or a desire, need to try to figure out a way to combat homelessness. And so me and some really smart women that I grew up with have started to talk about how we can leverage each of our skills. They're in the medical field. I'm obviously very data driven, and trying to find a way. We're all in California and we love California, and trying to find a way to solve the homelessness problem by getting ahead of it, but also understanding the why, the how, like how did these people get there, and figuring out a way to affect some level of change there. So we spend a lot of time talking about it, ideas for when we can afford to not work and just invest in trying to change that, at least for California, if not for the rest of the US, because it is becoming a bit of an epidemic. But so that if there was a legacy to be known for, my hope is that it's something within that realm post Lulu's, when I've got the time and the space to do something about it.
Ah, that's incredible. I mean, on the Lulu's piece, the gender pay gap arguably is a result of men not being able to take that paternity leave, and it being the women that are always staying at home and not being able to continue their career. That is kind of creating that mother parental gender pay gap, right? So being able to have that impact on your company even is making a big impact on the gender pay gap. So that is incredible. Congratulations and thank you.
Yeah.
And then on the homeless piece that you're moving forward with, you mentioned it's just in California right now, but if you can build a model that works, that is something that can be used globally and create such an incredible impact. So that all sounds really, really beautiful, Crystal.
Yeah, I hope so. It's like I said, if I'm successful at Lulu's, it'll create some space for that. And I know some really, really smart women. So I think if we can all band together and build a community around that, maybe we can solve some real problems. So that's the aspiration. It's the goal.
Thank you so much, Crystal. What a legacy. You've joined us for Why How Impact, and you have come a very long way. You've got the brains, you've got the ambition, and you've shown us that if you have that and you focus on your skill set, be in the moment rather than searching for status, you can achieve anything and you can have a broader impact. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Jasmine.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Why How Impact is a weekly conversation with our 2024 Trailblazing Women. So make sure you subscribe and tune in next week as we continue to explore what it takes to be a leader and the powerful why behind it all. Until then, keep striving to find what motivates you and focus on the moment rather than status. I'm Jasmine Keys, and this is Why, How, Impact. We'll see you next time.